Hi everyone. This is going to be a super low-res garage tech kind of tutorial. Got a crappy camera, but I was contacted by a couple of people who had difficulties connecting their servos or their light sensors last Monday for good reason. So I wanted to just show you a couple of quick, simple ways that you can do it now so that you can be ready for Monday's class and have some fun rather than be frustrated. So first thing I should mention is that it's usually a good idea to connect the battery pack with some fresh batteries when you're going to work with servos. I'll get into details about that on Monday, but USB, the plugging into the computer, is fine a lot of the time, but sometimes it's not, which can be quite frustrating, and it's pretty hard to tell when it's going to work and when it's not. Occasionally it will screw up. So I'll talk about it more on Monday, but for now, if you have batteries, you should plug them in and use the battery pack. It just gives a little more power to the servo. So what are the possibilities? There are two ways to do it. Or three actually, but the simplest way I won't get into because it's pretty obvious. The simplest way is if you got these in your kit. Those connect, three of those connect to your servo, and the other three can attach to wherever you want on the microbit, ground, 3 volt, and whatever pin you're controlling the servo with. So that's pretty easy. Don't worry about that one. What's a little bit more complicated is when you didn't get those. So what do? I think the easiest way that I would do it is to connect. Everybody's supposed to have these. And don't worry if you don't, it's possible. We have another workaround, which is probably the video that follows this one. So you have these, which you should have. These are double-sided alligator clips. The colors don't matter. So all we're going to do is we're going to kind of extend and attach them to the pins that we need on the microbit. So ground, 3 volt. I think the servo is on pin 2. That's where it's being controlled. And I have the servo sketch, the random one that I did on here. And I think pin 0 is what we are using for the light sensor. So what do we do? Why are we doing this and what are we doing? Well, we're just extending these. Now we have an electrical connection that goes out of there to these rather complex but basically quite simple wires. But what that does for us, it makes life so much easier, because then we can take these male-to-male wires, which are pointy at both ends, right? And we can connect those to the servo. And we don't care about the colors, because the colors, the wire doesn't care about the colors. Right? So now we have 3 wires into that end with these pointy ends. Now, what's going to happen? Well, we need to connect the power, the ground, and the signal or the information channel. So the ground is the brown, which is, of course, turns into another color in this side, orange. So we connect it. Where's the ground on the microbit? Right there, right? So we just do this. Connected. Now, what's the middle one? The middle one is power, and it's yellow in this one. So we want to connect the yellow wire here to the green wire, which is attached to 3 or 3V on the microbit. So that's done. And what's left? Well, we have to send information, right? The data telling the servo where to go. Well, we have that information flowing out of pin 2 because in our sketch we say analog pin 2, etc. So right now what we've done is we've created a connection to those 3 things. Not the most exciting sketch, but it's working. Okay, I'm going to turn the battery pack off for a second. Now, so far so good, but we now have a light sensor to connect, and look at all those wires. How are we going to do that? Actually, it's very simple. So, unlike the previous servo motor, which have pointy wires that are pointy at both ends, we have these. We have at least 6 of these wires, which have a hole at one end and a pin at the other end, male to female, as they're called. Okay, so those go on to your light sensor here, right? We were playing with that last week, and I think you've probably had a chance to play with it since then if you've if you've been good. Okay, so now we have 3 more connections to make, but it's not that bad now because we're not trying to connect it on the board with a piece of tape. We're actually going to connect it using the alligator clips. So the middle one is power on these guys, if you recall. You can look at the slides if you don't. So power is the green thing, the dark green. So yeah, is it messy? You bet. But it's easier than trying to tape it. So now what we're doing is we're connecting these 2 guys together, and look at that. We now have power going to not just the servo, but also to the light sensor. What's the next thing we want to connect? The light sensor, we need the purple wire. The purple wire has to connect to ground. Okay, so the ground is this light green wire. This is coming out of here, right? Goes around. So same deal as we did before. We got to fit these 2 pins into the teeth of the alligator clip. But there we are. So now we have ground and power to both the servo and the light sensor. The only thing that remains for us to do is to connect the light sensor pin where it takes information in, which is pin 0, to this guy. And voila. As messy as it looks, it's actually pretty straightforward, and you have a servo connected to a light sensor, and now the fun begins.